At the end of the last video, we just set up a couple different artboards in here. This one's 13 by 19, as is this one, and these are 19 by 13. They represent the size paper that we're going to print on. And then we were just about to make something that's the same ratio as our web pages, and that's where we got cut off. So what we'll do is you can either adjust these ahead of time. I don't want a stroke, and I do want to fill. And let's say that I'll just set these back to the default so you can see how to adjust these with me. So whichever one you're trying to change, bring that forward. That brings the stroke forward. Clicking here brings the fill forward. So for now, I'm just going to have a fill color that's black and bring the stroke forward and click on the none option. So now all I have is a fill that's black. Then I'm clicking on the rectangle tool. I'm going to click just anywhere with it and it will pop open like that, and that's where I'm going to put those sizes in that I wrote down. So I had 2000 px by 1600 px. And you can see as soon as I hit the tab key, it changes those into inches, which is fine. Just make sure that you entered them in there properly. Click OK. You'll get this. As long as it looks like it's the right ratio for your website, then you're good. And I'm just going to leave this over here off to the side, so in case I accidentally mess one of these up, I have a backup copy. And then what I'm going to do to make a copy of this one is click on it to select it, and then click and drag. But while I'm clicking and dragging, I'm going to hold down the option key, and you can see how my mouse has changed. And when I release the mouse and then the option key, I now have a copy of this. And I'm going to go to the corner, and it's very important that you do exactly the way that I say this. You want to start to bring the corner in, but hold the shift key down before you release the mouse. And what that'll do is constrain the proportions of this, and then release the mouse first and then the shift key. And then what you have is these two boxes are identical. They have the same ratio of width to height, and that's all that we're after. We could care less really at this point what this measures. And then we're just going to play around here and say, okay, if I only needed to show 3 pages of my website, this might work. And again, I'm holding down the option key to drag out another copy of this. And I'm not even worried about how I align them. I didn't hold down the option key long enough there, because I can always take care of that later. I might say, yeah, that might work. They're probably a little bit too big for there. But in my case, if you remember, I need to show quite a bit more than just 3. At a max, I would show 9. At probably a minimum, I want to show at least these 3 and maybe 2 variations of these. So what would that be? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm going to plan for 7. We'll see how it comes out. So I'm going back into Illustrator. And so what I'm going to do is just take this down here and then making a copy of it by holding down option and dragging. Hold down the shift key, click and drag on that corner, shift key still held down, release the mouse, release the shift key, and now I can go with the option dragging. And you can even select 2 things, hold down the option key and drag out, and you start to get ideas here of all the different ways that we could position these. And whatever I come up with might be quite different than what you come up with, but this certainly does help to give us some ideas. And then I could grab all of these. So what I'm doing is taking this just basic selection tool here and clicking and dragging around all of them. They all become highlighted. Then I'm going to click and drag, hold down the option key while I'm clicking and dragging, and then I have a bunch more, and I can see what kind of other ways I might be able to show these in here. And again, we'll worry about aligning these once we've experimented enough. Okay, so let's look at some options for aligning things. I'm purposely going to mess these things way up. So the way the alignment options work is if you take a look at this bar right here, you get them automatically when you select two or more things. So there they are. If you hover over the mouse, it tells you what they do, but once you look at them kind of analytically, it becomes pretty obvious what they do. So let me even move this more out of whack. So I can select these two and I can align them to the left. Let me Command Z to undo that. I could align them to the right. Command Z to undo that. I can do them by their centers. I can also, if I say, you know what, this one needs to go exactly right here. When you only have two, it's not too tough to figure this out, that what you'd want to do is align them to the right, because if you do that, the one that's furthest to the left is going to snap into place. But what if you they were of different sizes or something? Let's say, what if you wanted to use this option here? Let's say we're going to align them on center. Watch what normally happens. Aligning by center, they kind of split the difference. So I'll Command Z that to back up. If I say I want to align them on center, but I want this to be the key object that they align to, what I do is I click on this one, shift click on this one, or just simply draw the marquee around both of them, and then I click on this one more time, and it gets a thicker selection around it. And that color will be whatever color is assigned to the layer that you're currently working on. But now if I hit this option, it aligns them and keeps that one fixed. So now I could say, okay, I like that alignment. Now let me get this one aligned up with the top one. So in that case, all I'd have to do is select both of these, align them to the top. Not only that, but you can also do things like that. You can say, why waste my time doing that when I like exactly the way these are? So what you could do is say, yeah, that's perfect. Those are always going to stay like that. I can select both of those and go up to Object and make a group out of them. And now if I click, all I have to do is select one. They both automatically become selected because they're a group. Click and drag. I get the second one. But now watch this. If I select both of these and I align them, I get a, they align as a group. Whereas if they were just individual objects and I selected to align to the top, what would happen is they would just cave in on each other. And then let's say that we like that. Now, when you have three objects and you want to get the exact right distance, in fact, let's make a mess out of these. But let's say we want this one to stop here. We want this one to stop here. And we want the computer to figure out the perfect distance in between them. Then we use one of these options over here, a distribution. So if I vertically distribute the center, boom, get that nice clean alignment, align over there, and then I could make a group out of these. But before I do that, let's say that I like that distance between there and I want to make sure it's the same over here. Why worry about it? Just get rid of these, take these two, hold down the Option key, drag them out. Now I know for sure that they're the same distance. Now I can go ahead and go Object Group, and then these are a group, so I can drag out another. And then if I want the distance to be distributed amongst these, dividing out the page in a certain way, all I really have to do is make sure that the first one and the last one are where I need them to be. Select all of these, and then once again, distribute it, this time horizontal centers. Oh, that didn't work because I did not group these. So let me go back, Command Z, select these. Command G is the shortcut for grouping. Let's try that again. Well, they're grouped, and there we get the exact result we were after. And if we want them aligned at the top, we can go that. If we want them aligned on center, we can choose the center option, then move them into place. So that was a lot of stuff there, but those are kind of things you want to know working in this program for sure. If you get something that you kind of like and you say, hey, I'd like to maybe keep this as an idea, but I'd like to see what it maybe looks like moving these a little bit closer together, then what you can do is go to the Artboard tool. Notice the last artboard you were on becomes selected, but you can select any artboard that you want just by clicking on it. And then here's the key item right here is if this is off and I do an option drag, I just get the artboard. But if I turn this on and I do an option key down and then a drag, I get a copy of what's on the artboard as well. So that's a nice little time saver, and then you could just start moving these things around a little bit and work with your alignment options again. Now keep in mind these are just placeholders for the eventual images that we'll bring in. But before you bring the images, maybe you want to think about any additional things that you might want to do to the display. Like maybe you actually want to show the flow via wire diagrams. Maybe you feel like you're having a hard time adjusting the white space on here and you think, well, this would be a good time for me to bring in some additional typographic elements such as my name, you know, what the design was for and so on. So let's look at an example of that. So maybe the designer, me in this case, thought this would be a nice way to show it, or I could put my home page here and show that from the home page goes to the contact page. Once you submit the contact page, you're showing the thank you page. Here's 2 portfolio pages showing. You know, here's an overall name for the project, because keep in mind this would be print-based work that might get mounted to a blackboard and, you know, brought into the office of a prospective employer, and then a little bit of information on what it's on. If you're wondering how I changed the color of these, all I did was just simply click them. I can go over here, open up the swatches, pick a different swatch color. In this case, I just picked a lighter gray color to make the boxes, and then I did this just by making a stroke. And the way I did that, some people like using the line segment tool better, but I'm more of an old school pen tool type person. To make a straight line with the pen, all you do is just make sure, in this case, you get rid of the fill and you have a stroke only. So this was what we had before for making the boxes. I could just simply hit this, flip-flop them, or if I needed a different color for the stroke, I just bring it forward, go back over here, choose whatever color I want from the swatches, or double click here and create my own color in a variety of different ways. Then what you do is you just click, that starts your line. Do not drag. It was just simply a click and release, and then to put the other end of your line, you click again. If you want it to stop, you have to hit the escape key, so that stops it. If you want to continue on to it, like I made this segment here, then you would just click here, click back here. If you're worried about it not going perfectly straight, it kind of tells you that it is, or you kind of feel the snap. But you can also hold down the shift key, and that will constrain the way that your lines move. And then once again, have to hit the escape key to get out of there. If you want the stroke to be thicker, then you go to the options here for the stroke, which this is the icon for that. And you can change it from, typically the default is 1 point, but you can make thicker strokes, thinner strokes. And let me just blast through those and delete them. And there's a lot of ways to work smart in this program. Like let's say, for example, you had drawn this one out and you realize you need another one over here. Rather than trying to recreate it from scratch, you can of course do the drag with the option key held down. You can even also hold the shift key down to prevent it from accidentally moving up and down on you. And then just get it shy of where it needs to go. Release the shift key, release the option key, and then select this up here as well as this, and then use your alignment options. All right, when I start out the next video, I'll fix this problem. I must not have held down the option key, and then we'll talk about some more ways of working real accurately.